going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Viall Files. I'm your host, Nick. I'll be with you on this journey, joined by my producer, Chrissy. Chrissy, how are you?
I'm good. I'm also on this journey, so thank you.
I don't know where we're going.
I love this journey for you.
But we're on it.
We're on it.
We have such a delightful episode for you today that just sounds fun because our guest is Australian. And
yes.
Sounds amazing.
Everything she says is
If
better.
you've watched Love on the Spectrum, you will know who Jodi Rodgers is. She is the, what does she refer to herself? She doesn't like to be called an expert. Specialist who works with the cast, the autistic cast on Love on the Spectrum. She's also been studying sexuality and sensuality for her entire adult life.
She got a master's.
And so we both talk about Love on the Spectrum, the show, autism, the spectrum, and we get into sexuality and sensuality and spicing up things in the bedroom and in relationships and things that might be considered that taboo but are not. And we just have a fun conversation about autism and sex, basically.
I mean, there you go.
There you go. It's a nice sandwich.
It's a nice little sandwich.
So I hope you enjoy it. Don't forget to send in your questions at asknick@castmedia.com, cast with a K. Send your questions. We appreciate those who send in the questions. They are the lifeblood of our Ask Nick episodes. So if you're struggling with something and you have an interesting story, go ahead and take the time to email us. And if you want to bring in your partner, even more fun.
Even more fun.
You won't regret it. You can be anonymous. Subscribe. Whatever. Jodi Rodgers. Jodi, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Obviously, Chrissy and I are big fans of you, and even bigger fans of the show Love on the Spectrum, of which you were a big part of. And so we wanted to have you on and have a conversation, obviously, about the show. I know a lot of my friends and just people worldwide, quite frankly, really enjoyed the show, and I think it opened up a lot of people's eyes to the autism community and normalized it in a great way. But I also think there were some helpful takeaways for everyone watching it as it relates to relationships. And I thought it would just be fun to have you on.
I'm more than happy to, be here with you from the other side of the world.
Yeah. So I guess maybe let's start at the beginning. I know briefly. Oh, there's Jodi's cat.
I love it.
For those listening. I know that you are reluctant to be referred to as an expert.
Yes.
Why? And that being said, could you give us, expert or not, a little bit about yourself and your background, and how did you get into studying relationships, and then how did you start working with the autism community?
Well, I don't call myself an expert at all. In actual fact, when they made the show in Australia, I was refused to let them use that word, because in two fronts, I think the only people that can be an expert in a field, if you're talking about autism, the only people who really can be experts on autism are autistic people themselves. It's their lives and their story and their experience of autism. And I'm not autistic, so that's number one. And the other one is, if anyone said they were an expert on relationships, then their whole life, their relationships would be only successful. And that's not how relationships work. Relationships are complex and difficult. And so, yeah, I just don't claim expert. I don't have a PhD. I haven't, studied it to that length. So I call myself a specialist in the fact that I specialise in those areas, but definitely I'm learning every single day and continue to learn every single day about both autism and sexuality and relationships. So that's that part.
Did you get into studying sexuality and relationships before you knew you wanted to specialize in the autism space?
No, actually it worked the opposite way, Nick. So what happened was I was working within the disability space, and I know you can't tell by my incredibly youthful look, but I've worked in the for over 30 years. So when I first started working, autism, people with a diagnosis of autism all had an intellectual disability. So there wasn't a concept of somebody with Asperger's or people that had autism that didn't have an intellectual disability until the 90s. So in the time period that I've worked with autistic people, the diagnosis has changed 3 to 4 times. So I originally started working within the disability community, then started specialising in autism specifically. And what I found was there was a lot of support for young children, young autistic children. And then as people got older, we seemed to drop away on, how can I explain it? So when kids are little, we did a lot about social skills for kids and connecting with other people. And then once kids got into high school and then moved into adulthood, it's like we stopped talking about relationships because the complexity, as we all know, in intimate and romantic and, you know, sexual relationships, I think just was a too hard basket for many people. Except that I was finding, because I was working with people over a lifespan, nearly every person I was working with needed support in sexuality and relationships. So that's when I went the opposite direction and started doing sort of much more counselling specifically for the autistic community or people who communicate in a different way. And then finally put my money where my mouth is and went and got a master's degree in sexual health counselling and sexuality. So, yeah, it was the autism and disability first and then the relationships second. Interesting.
How did Love on the Spectrum come to pass? Because I feel like when we spoke briefly before we recorded, you guys started producing the show before there was any relationship with Netflix or any guarantee that it was going to be streaming worldwide. You guys had, I think, if my memory serves, kind of low expectations at first.
Yeah. So remember when you say you, I'm not part of the production team. I'm just somebody they talked into being on the show.
So they had the idea and they came to you.
Yeah. So what happened was the production team, Northern Pictures, had actually produced in Australia another couple of documentaries that were about employment and disability. And while they were making those documentaries, many of the people that they were filming based on employment, autistic people were saying, I really want a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or I really want to, you know, experience love. And so this idea just developed about actually, could we produce something, or could they produce something that was based around that, you know, adults' experience, autistic experience of love and dating. So it grew from that. But yes, in Australia, it was on our public broadcasting. I don't know what the equivalent is in the US, but here it's our government public broadcasting channel. I thought maybe 3 people would watch it. That was about it. But it was really popular in Australia, really, really popular. And I think came out at a time when, you know, the year's been really crappy for lots of us. And so it came out at a time when I think people just really needed something that was joyous and hopeful and easy to watch. And then out of the blue, all of a sudden Netflix picks it up. So they contacted me, the production team contacted me and just said, oh, by the way, Jodi, Netflix has picked it up and it's going global. So, yeah, that was a bit of a shock for everybody. Did
you get to talk to any of your patients about the fact that it got all the buzz that it got? You know, I'm curious, like Michael's reaction. I'd love to know Michael's reaction.
I love Michael so much.
When they asked me to be on the show, I originally said no, Nick, because I'm a therapist. You know, this is my job, and what I know is that if you build a relationship therapeutically, that sounds a bit wanky, but, you know, if you build a relationship with somebody, particularly an autistic person, that's really important to me. That relationship is really integrally important, and I'm really worried about being filmed, you know, rocking up to Michael's house, like you were talking. I'll tell you about that in a minute, but I didn't want to be filmed in an unnatural situation and then go, okay, see ya, I'll never see you again. So I requested that any person that I was filmed with on the show, that I spoke to their families and then after meeting them and said, could I continue to see them? So Michael and I We still Skype each other on a Saturday afternoon every month. Kelvin and I, still chat regularly. And so every single person I work with, I've still got an ongoing relationship with. Michael is an absolute card of a human. He is so funny. And
he's so earnest and so...
He's the best. I want to find my own Michael.
Yeah.
He's great. And the funny thing about him is he knows he's funny. So when people are sort of saying, oh, why are people laughing at Michael? And because he's so deadpan, like he's really dry and really deadpan. And that's part of his autism. But he knows that he's funny. So if you laugh, even though he doesn't have any kind of, he doesn't laugh back. How can I explain it? Like if I was telling you guys a joke, I would start laughing at myself for being witty before I've even got through the punchline. But Mike doesn't do that. He's just really...
That's what makes it so funny.
So when he talks about his popularity, his global popularity, I'm saying, and then people are saying, oh, he should have his own show, and he's really deadpan about it. So almost like he says, of course. Of course I would be popular. He's just a really great person. But I think it's just been a shock for everyone that it was picked up by Netflix in the first place because it was so small. It was such a small idea and really was just going to have 4 episodes in Australia and that was going to be it. But, it's great. Got a life of its own.
What is Michael dating? What's his relationship status these days?
I am not allowed to tell you.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah,
so
because
there's a chance.
they're in the midst of filming season 2, and
that's right.
Yeah, so I'm under a confidentiality contract and can't tell you anything. But what I can tell you is there will be catch-ups of what's happened to people that have been.
Could you at least say if love is in the air with anyone?
Love is in the air with lots of people.
Okay.
That's good. And that makes me happy because I saw that they were casting. So I thought maybe it was going to be a whole new group of people. But if they're still going to catch up with the old people, then that makes me feel better.
Yeah. And everybody wants the what's happened to the others. Yeah. So what's happened for season 1. Yeah. I wish I could tell you, but no, I can't. Sorry.
Hey, you're wondering what to give your guy for Christmas. Well, why don't you give both of you the gift of a clean under area, a groomed area with Manscaped. Support for the Viall Files comes with Manscaped, who is the best in men's below-the-belt grooming. Manscaped offers precision engineering tools for the family jewels. No task is too furry for Manscaped. So clean up those balls with some nice grooming for your man in your life, and quite honestly, for you. I mean, if he wants you to help him out in the bedroom, the least he can do is clean that area up. And it's never been more possible with the revolutionary company Manscaped, and their Lawnmower 3.0 has the proprietary advanced skin-safe technology. So this trimmer cuts on your nuts. It's also waterproof, so you can use it in the shower. Great. The Lawnmower 3.0 comes inside their brand new Perfect Package 3.0, which makes for the perfect gift for this holiday season. It's literally everything you need to keep trimmed, cut-free, and smelling nice down there. Well, I could vouch for you. You can go nuts and have cut-free. You can do this blindfolded. Anyone can now trim their balls and have with safety and security that you want when trimming your balls. That's right. Also, they have ball deodorant, which makes sense. I mean, if you're gonna put deodorant on your armpits, why not put it in the smelliest part of your body? Apparently, your balls. And yes, your balls can stink. I mean, let's just ask the lady listeners out there, do your man's balls stink sometimes? Should we get him some deodorant? I think you should. Well, this perfect package comes with a bunch of great things like boxers and deodorant and most importantly, the Manscaped Perfect Package 3.0. And stop using that same, how many lady listeners, how many of if your guy has one trimmer, he's using the same trimmer on his face as he does on his balls. That's just gross for everyone. So make him stop, right? And give him the wonderful gift of manscaping so he can just have a ball down there by cleaning his balls. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code VIAL at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use code VIAL. Clean up your nuts and make Santa proud this year. Your balls will thank you. We all want to make healthy choices, that's right, but we barely have enough time to chew, let alone cook. Making healthy food is easy with BlendJet, your blender on the go. BlendJet is the original portable blender that makes it easy to create fresh meal anytime, anywhere. I used my BlendJet this morning. It was super easy and super healthy when I blended my spinach, my banana, my strawberries, a little bit of orange juice, some water, some ice. Blend it, and away I went. BlendJet is a compact and lightweight, all around the same size as your favorite water bottle, but it packs big blender power. The new and improved BlendJet 2 quietly crushes through ice and frozen fruit. Plus, you can use it every day for 2 weeks without charging with any standard USB port. I can vouch for all that. It crushes the ice I put in there. It's amazing. And the BlendJet makes a perfect gift for everyone who's on your list that's looking to eat healthy and loves owning the latest must-have fitness accessory. BlendJet is the #1 blender brand on Instagram with over 17,000 five-star reviews and over 1 million happy customers around the world. Try it risk-free with BlendJet's 30-day money-back guarantee. Go to blendjet.com/VIALL right now to save an extra 12%. Save an extra 12% at blendjet.com/VIALL. That is blendjet.com/VIALL. With people with autism, what is the biggest hurdle that they, face when they're trying to deal with interpersonal relationships? And people always people talk about the spectrum, right, and what that means. And when you're working with your patients, how do you identify strengths and weaknesses of your patients? Because as I'm sure is the case, various patients have various degrees of autism, and that affects them differently. Or is that not the case?
Yeah, no, that's 100% correct. So it's because it is a spectrum, it's really broad. And I always say that every person's autism presents in a different way. But there's some key things that diagnostically, and remember I was saying to you, it's changed 3 or 4 times. So in my lifetime, I'll see the diagnosis change again. But currently what they do, autism is only seen through observable behaviours, how people interact. And one of those things is within what they call social communication or social interaction, the way people with autism interact with other people. And it can be, let me give you an example. So one of the areas they look for is what they call social and emotional reciprocity. So that's basically matching another person, both socially and emotionally. So it could be that a person may have problems initiating conversation. They may not even know how to start a conversation. They might be really, really aloof and distant. They may have kind of a different way, or some people call it active and odd, way of starting a conversation. They might just come in sideways, and rather than doing a greeting or building slowly into a communication or conversation, they'll just come in with their special interest. So that might be one presentation. It might be that people have great difficulties keeping a conversation going. They just can't. Like they've got a rote-learnt system of what you say in a conversation, but once they've got through that rote-learnt set of questions, then they don't know where to go with that. Or they may not be able to they may be really good conversationalists as long as it's about their area of interest or the things that they're into, but they've got no interest in what you're saying whatsoever. If you're talking about their stuff and what they're into, that's cool. Every single one of us, if I went through the diagnostic criteria for autism, every single one of us does these little ticks. And that's that's what I keep saying to people, that we've all got it. We're all quirky and we're all different. And this is what makes humans so wonderful, that we have all of these things going on. To have a diagnosis of autism, it has to be complexity on a daily basis that, means that your relationships or the way you interact with people, or it gets in the way of work or social interaction. You're fine, Nick. Gotcha. You're fine.
Well, and honestly, either way, like, this is who I am. And it brings me like a question that I have in terms of, I think a lot of people's introduction to autism was the movie Rain Man. Do you remember the movie Rain Man with Tom Cruise and Dustin Hoffman? A brilliant movie. It's older, but I I think that was a lot of people's first introduction with it. And since then, it's become a lot more normalized and a lot more aware. And I'm assuming a great way. You know, now people are getting diagnosed properly and more often. And it sounds like, especially watching Love on the Spectrum, that wasn't always the case. People, you know, I was even surprised while watching Love on the Spectrum how many of your patients weren't diagnosed until late teens, you know, early, you know, and that was like, wow, you know, you would think how frustrating that might be to go, you know, through 15, 16 years of life, not having any answers to their uniqueness. Right. And then when you have like the spectrum, now people are more aware of it, but now they, you know, it might even say like, oh, I wonder if he or she's on the spectrum, or they do something weird, or they do something quirky. Is that an offensive thing for people to suggest, or is it maybe in a good way? Just it's become more mainstream, and now people are aware of autism and aware of what it means to be on the spectrum. Or where do you fall on that kind of point of view on how normalized it has become as a good or a bad thing, if anything?
So the autistic community, there's a great sense of pride in the autistic community, and I think, you know, what you just spoke about too, there's two sides to that story. One is, isn't it brilliant that we have this kind of inclusive language, that we actually are all understanding that we're all diverse. The way we perceive the world and interact is really diverse. So in one hand, it's really great that we will be able to say, oh, geez, that's a bit autistic, or, you know, that you're on the spectrum, or that's kind of, because that shows that as a general population, we're getting more and more knowledge about people with different neurology and the way that they present. And it's not a scary thing, and it's not something that needs to be sort of put away and not thought about. It's about us as a mainstream being educated, and then we're kind of almost turning it into something where we recognise those traits in other people or have a giggle about it. I mean, the other hand of that is that the autistic community is a really, really strong community, and that they are starting to talk about neurodiversity, and that maybe we need to stop talking about autism or ADHD or, you know, these different things, and actually just look at a population of people who are neurodiverse. So
what do you mean by neurodiverse?
So I always think about it like the bell curve, really. So the majority of us interact in a specific way, or we have a specific style of the way we do things. But the autistic community are really looking at when people do things differently, is that such a bad thing? Is it more, you know, maybe it's the mainstream population have to be much more accepting of the way that somebody communicates in a different way, and much more inclusive of that difference. Because I'll show you the difference with it, Nick. If you and I meet somebody and they're just really odd in their interaction, and I know you know that those people. So say we went somewhere socially and we get introduced to somebody, and pretty quickly you can pick up if somebody's, you know, in your own head, you might be thinking, man, this person's really different in the way they're doing things, or you get a little bit uncomfortable in the way they're talking, or they just talk at you incessantly, so you try and back out and get away from that. We used to say, we would say, geez, that person's odd, or we'd move away from it. If we get more understanding of people have different ways of interacting, maybe we actually move towards it a little bit. Maybe we move into that, and we actually then are able to go, oh, maybe this guy's, hang on, sorry, I'm talking. Sometimes I do this. My brain works really quickly, and I'd get halfway through a sentence and then I'll go on to something else. But somebody told me something beautiful the other day, and that was that they work in a call centre, and they said that there's this guy that rings the call centre all the time, and he's known for being a bit of a pain in the backside because he's always on his own agenda. He's always saying what he needs to say. He's always complaining about things. And they said that everybody, when he'd call in the call centre, they'd try and push him onto somebody else. And then they said to me that they had watched Love on the Spectrum. It went around the office that, you know, that they should watch this show. And then this email that somebody said to me is that then after the show, somebody said, maybe Bill has autism. Maybe he's on the spectrum. And it has completely changed the way those people are interacting with him, because they're now not seeing him as the odd different person. They're seeing him as somebody that actually it's not him deliberately being this way. It's because this is who he is. Does that help answer that question?
Yeah, but it's also, I don't know if it's great or sad in a way. Like, as humans, we almost need to label something to feel more comfortable with it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But I guess what you're saying is they just weren't sure if he was a dick or not.
Yep.
And now we're like, oh, he's not a dick. He's just like,
he's just
his way of communicating.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
It's his way of communicating. And maybe if we communicate in a different way with him, it will actually be easier for both of us. And that's what I find. I work with autistic people every single day, but they're autistic. That's just the way their brains work. So I could sit there for the next 30 years of my life saying, will you change? Will you do it my way? Will you be a bit more like me, socialise like me? But it's not going to happen because that's the way they are. So why isn't it that I need to change the way that I interact to move closer towards their differing way of communicating?
So, as a specialist who works with autistic people, you're not necessarily, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're not trying to change what they do or teach them to do things differently. You're more working with them so that you can take their skill set and adapt it to be able to have a relationship in their own way, not necessarily in the way that people who aren't on the spectrum are used to having relationships.
Yep, that's 100% correct. And it's like, if I don't know whether you have, but if you ever go to a psychologist or a therapist, it's not like you walk in there and they go, right, this is what we're going to do with you. We're going to, that's not how it works. We go to somebody saying, here's what I need help with. Here's the things that I'm having difficulty with. So every single person that I see comes to me with their own unique, and they're not just autistic. We've got to remember that, it's every single sexual orientation and gender and religion and race and ethnicity and politics, it's all of that sort of stuff. But when they come to me, they might say, I'm in a relationship with somebody, but I'm having a lot of difficulty negotiating and understanding compromise in this relationship. Or it might be somebody different saying, I'm in this really great relationship, but I've got no understanding of intimacy. Or I really want to be in a relationship, but I don't know how to meet somebody. Or every relationship I'm in is failed. So everybody comes with something different. And I'm not saying like now you should act in this way. I'm just trying to support them in their need to fulfill that, whatever their goal is in that way.
If you're looking for the absolute softest, most miraculous sheets, duvets, covers, towels, and loungewear, Brooklinen is the place for you. Brooklinen, I got Brooklinen all over my house if you haven't noticed or seen my Instagram. Brooklinen was started by Rich and Vicky. What a cute pair. Who also tried to find beautiful home essentials that didn't cost them an arm and a leg. And when they couldn't find it, they just decided to start their own company, Brooklinen, as the first direct-to-consumer bedding company. And I tell you what, it's changed my life. I couldn't be happier to have the relationship I have with Brooklinen because I have the best sheets, the best patterns, the best material, and it feels amazing. Over 50,000 five-star reviews and counting, and they're so confident about their product that all their bedding comes with a lifetime warranty. A lifetime warranty. You can buy sheets, bedding, and pillows, and best of all, their loungewear. You'll never have softer sweatpants, sweatshirts. It's for men and women. It's truly remarkable. Don't wait. Do something nice for yourself. Go to brooklinen.com and use promo code VIALL to get 10% off your first order and free shipping. That's BROOKILLNEN.com and enter promo code VIALL for 10% off your first order plus free shipping. Brooklinen.com and use promo code VIALL at checkout. It is an amazing gift for yourself or someone else. You will be an absolute hero by getting someone Brooklinen. I promise you that. Skylight, baby. Never worry about your grandma, your mom, your dad having outdated pictures of you hanging up in their house anymore because Skylight Frames lets you upload new and recent photos of your new haircut, your new dress, your new girlfriend from the comfort of your home. You broke up with that guy you don't like anymore? Well, take that picture down and upload that new glam shot of yourself and someone else. Skylight Frames is the photo frame you can update instantly by email from anywhere. A great way to feel close to those you love, even when you're separated. It sets up effortlessly in under 60 seconds. Just plug it in, use the touchscreen to connect to your wireless network, and enjoy. Sending photos to Skylight is effortless. Everyone in your family can just email them to your personal Skylight email address, and they'll pop up in seconds. So you just give your mom, your grandma, this new frame, and then when you break up with your boyfriend, you upload this new hot photo of yourself. It takes on this old photo of you and your crappy ex, and they no longer have to look at that face anymore. 100% satisfaction guarantee. If you don't love your Skylight, then they'll offer you a full refund. Can't beat that. And you can preload it with your favorite photos for your personalized gift. Important pictures of you and the significant others and spouses, grandparents in your life they didn't even know that you had. My mom just had a birthday. I gave her a Skylight frame of pictures of me, and boy, she cried because she loves me so much. True story. Now as an offer, you can get 10% off your purchase of a Skylight frame when you go to skylightframe.com and enter code FILES, F-I-L-E-S. That's right. Get 10% off your purchase of a Skylight frame. Just go to skylightframe.com and enter code FILES, F-I-L-E-S. That is SKYLIGHTFRAME.com. Promo code F-I-L-E-S. And are you, what's your, well, I guess you probably can't talk about show related. Do you have like a big success story that like your most, that makes you feel really good or warm and fuzzy, or someone that you started working with without naming names, or just like a story of working with a patient that's now like happily in love and married?
You know, I've worked with autistic people for 30 years, so if I didn't have some successes sometimes, I don't know what the hell I'm still doing.
Yeah, I don't know, but I'm sure you have. I guess just what do you have a heartwarming one for us?
It's like I am a relationship counsellor. You know, I'm a sexologist and a sex therapist and a relationship counsellor. So the success is what those people see as being success. But yeah, 100%. I've worked with people that couldn't even walk into a space where there's other people, and now they're in long-term relationships with children. You know, the whole, if that's what people see as successful, sure. There's other people that have thought that a relationship is what makes us, or is the kind of biggest goal in life, that to be in a long-term successful relationship actually makes you normal. That's their understanding of it, and being able to actually shake that up a bit and say, is that what we all need in life? You know, some people come in thinking that's what they need and find out actually they're asexual and they don't even want to be in a relationship with somebody else, but their perception of relationship sometimes needs to shift. Yeah, it's very hard because you're asking me to, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people.
So what is a sexologist?
So a sexologist is somebody that, a sex therapist basically, but I call myself a sexologist. So it's somebody that's studied.
Sounds more fun.
Yeah, it does. They've studied human sexuality in a postgraduate level or master's degree level. So it means that they understand and have studied everything about human sexuality. So that can be the anatomy and physiology, the behaviour, gender, all different types of presentations in sexualized behavior, fetishes, you know, paraphilias.
Fetishes. How does one determine whether a fetish is a healthy fetish, or is there such a thing as a healthy fetish, or where do you draw the line in being?
I hope so.
And yeah.
Well,
I'm curious about fetishes. Yeah.
I suppose it's the same as
what makes something a fetish? Let's start there.
Yeah, well, I suppose if you do whatever you want to do in the privacy of your own bedroom, if it's not harming you or anybody else, then it's not really a fetish. If it's impacting on your day-to-day functioning, or if you become so into it that you can't leave the house, or it's impacting on your relationships with other people. I mean, if you've got a fetish that you then have a partner, and this is something that you want to be fulfilled with that partner, sometimes even being able to talk about that with another person can be very complex and difficult. You know, we have trouble talking about sex, even if we're just heterosexual missionary position, have trouble talking about that with our partner.
Especially in America. We do not, I mean, I think we've gotten better at it. We promote a very sex positive culture on this show, but we grew up in a very puritanical society in the States, and even, God bless my parents, but we didn't talk much about sex. So are you saying a fetish is only a fetish if if it can be harmful or it gets in the way of your?
So anything that it's, there's a criteria for when somebody would say, oh yeah, this is a paraphilia, something that is become complex in their life. But I suppose the difficulty with that is it's still a diagnostic criteria, and a diagnostic criteria is all about if it's impacting on your day-to-day life.
So if you're just like into sucking toes and your partner's fine with it, and like that's just something you do, that's not a fetish. Because people will say like, oh, he or she has a foot fetish, or
no. But if like wearing a leather jockstrap under everything that you have to wear under your business suit every day gets you off, then
that's a fetish. Okay. Well, I didn't know that. I think a lot of people then use the word fetish a little too loosely and liberally.
Yeah.
I can't we get calls about it all the time.
People's presentation and what their sexual desire and what arouses them and what they're it is so diverse. It is, we just get vanilla mainstream stuff, but what people want, what people need, what's their sensuality and their expression of sexuality is so. I always tell this story about one of the things when I was first becoming a sexologist and had to talk about this on a daily basis. We basically had to, learn to do this a bit like Michael without having an emotional reaction to it. But I always say that at one point I was doing some counselling and a fella was telling me a story about what he was into. And I was sitting in an armchair like you are, Nick, so it had, armrests on the side. And I was so glad that it had an armrest because you're meant to be completely non-judgmental and non-value. And you don't want to kind of express to somebody else to go, what are you talking about? But this guy was telling me the story. I had my arm on the armrest like that because I had my chin up with that. Because if I'd taken my hand away, my face would have been like this. What are you telling me? When you talk about sex all day long.
Are you able to share what it was without breaking any?
I won't go into detail, but it had something to do with a love of snails.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. That's
well, you talk about diversity. I saw an article actually. I tweeted it. It was Pornhub shared some of the top searches during the week of the election, and quite bizarre. Grandmas was the top search in both Tennessee and South Carolina. Yeah.
Okay.
How interesting. I'm going to go and do that after we've finished speaking.
Yeah. What is your thoughts? We get a lot of questions about porn and the role it plays in a relationship if it's harmful. Do you have any thoughts on porn and how people should or could use it to benefit, and where does it maybe become harmful?
I've gone quiet because it's the same thing. I see it from every angle, and it's about persons. Yes, I think it can be really fantastic, and I think it can be great for individuals. There's many, many lonely people who don't have the touch of somebody else, and so they need to go to something that allows them to get off, basically. So I think it can be really successful in relationships as a way of people being able to explore things that are different and diverse and open up so that they don't just get into the routine of, and sex can become routine for lots of people. Like literally it can be.
Well, yeah, that was
touches
actually
left breast, hand touches right breast.
That was my next question is we like spicing things up. I mean, if you're someone who's wants to be a monogamous relationship and you value that commitment, and then all of a sudden 5 years go by, 10 years go by, 15 years go by, what are some things that you would suggest, and how can a couple communicate to quote unquote spice it up in the bedroom? So,
one, they can watch porn. Sometimes I go back to people because people forget that our sexuality is really built on sensuality. Like it's really built on how we feel about ourselves first. So if you're feeling really, Chrissy, you might, women sometimes are much more accessible to this. Sorry, Nick, but I'll build you in here with it. But like if we're feeling really sensual and really sexual, then that oozes out of us. But do you know when we're first in relationships with other people, we do a lot of preparation. We do a lot of thinking in our head, like all these kind of chemicals are going off in our brain and we're feeling this level of attraction. We get a bit giddy and we do a lot of stuff to make. So if I'm going out to meet somebody or if we're in a early relationship, we actually take the time. We go, I'll have a shower. What can I do to
an
make
extra long shower
good?
To make sure everything gets cleaned up.
We prepare an environment to go, like if you know somebody's coming back to your house, you don't just leave your wet towel on the floor and your dirty old undies on the bed. And so I think what happens in relationships isn't just about the routine of what happens sexually. I think it's about routine of life. And so sometimes what I'll do with people is actually say, let's think back to what you were feeling like and what you did in this preparation that you guys had the best sex of your lives or when you're really enjoying it. Do you know, for some people, that can be as simple as saying, early on we used to get a 6-pack of beer and go out on a date and eat pizza together. And it's really interesting what different people need to do. Or they used to go camping together, but they haven't done that for 15 years. Or sometimes it's rediscovering your sensuality to start with and actually spending the time to go, when I'm at my most aroused. No, I'm not. I'm just using me as an example. Here you go.
Please, the world needs to know.
Yeah. When I'm feeling my most sexual, that means I'm giving to my partner much more than just lying back. Well, I don't know. You guys might not know this, but there's a terminology we use in Australia because we're from the Commonwealth saying lie back and think of England. You basically, I don't know whether you use that. It's like basically lie back and let it happen.
Yeah.
No, that's not how it should be. It's meant to be between the two of you.
Sure.
And I think that if you are sensual in yourself, if you approach your partner, but you're already gone and had a bubble bath, you've had a glass of champagne, you've listened to that music that really gets you going, you set the environment up, you give yourselves the time to do it, that's when it happens because it starts in us first. If I'm feeling crap or any of us are feeling crap, then it becomes an act. Oh, I just got to do this, got to do it once a week because it's part of the maintenance of the relationship. And if I don't do it, then he'll nag me for the next. I'm talking heterosexually, but this is any couple. So that I think relationships become routine, and when a relationship becomes routine, sex becomes part of that routine. Yeah. So sometimes you got to spice a relationship up, and it's not about spicing it up in the bedroom. Sometimes it's actually doing it outside of the bedroom, and then it goes off. Or the other one I say to people, which is a real trick. If you've been having sex and you do it routinely, why don't you have a go at just having a smooch and you basically put a barrier on it? Because sometimes when we were at our most wanting, like our most, oh, my God, I want you so badly.
Oh, yeah, it's the making out part.
It was when we were making out.
Withholding of love. That's what The Bachelor's built on. It's just a bunch
it's like
of
that making out, like just kissing for hours part.
Yeah, exactly.
So you almost forbid each other to have sex for a period of time while showing affection.
Why don't you just see if you can just have a pash for 15 minutes without just pashing or only touching on top of clothes? See where that gets you. Because it is sometimes about that.
That's hot.
Some couples have stopped kissing. Some people have stopped touching. Some people don't do any tenderness or any affection outside of the bedroom.
Is it usually the guy's fault because he's
no.
Because but you suggested, and I'm not disagreeing, that the men sometimes require less preparation. We're fine with the towel on the floor early on, so to speak.
And that's biology. Like there's science. You can read as much research all the way back to the Kingsley Report stuff. That and Johnson & Johnson, men's and women's sexual, and I'm being very gender,
Sure.
multiple ways, but if our hormones mean that we have a different sexual response system, and men's sexual response system is very different from a woman's sexual response system.
Yeah.
So you're right. I sometimes say, like, once the testosterone's going off in the fellas, then once you've got testosterone in your system, it's like heading straight for the goalpost. I don't know what you guys would use, going for the touchdown or something.
No, goalpost works, yeah.
Yeah, goalpost. So where women's sexual arousal system actually takes a bit longer, and it's a complex thing, because most men, if we're talking penetrative sex, I don't know how we've got into all of this, but if you talk about penetrative sex, then men orgasm within a period of time, where women's orgasm actually takes longer than that. So it's a nice fact of just trying to just try, and that's heterosexual, but everybody's sexual arousal system's different. So knowing what your partner requires or needs or wants is part of the communication, and it is hard. Like, it's hard to talk about our relationships with each other and the way we communicate with each other, let alone talking about your sexual needs or what you want, or it's a hard area to chat about.
Yeah, and it's fascinating. I mean, it makes a lot of sense too. You simplified it so well in terms of how people can spice it up almost by not assuming sex is a guarantee, or it's just something you do, but you almost go back to making it the prize between the two of you, or like something you both like build up or earn together, like the kissing, the foreplay, the withholding, the doing the deeds of, like, what we used to hike before, the sensuality, the going out of your way, the effort, the like create it and make it
even some of the things I sometimes talk about, if you understand the sexual response system really well, what happens is, the brain sends the message down to our heart rate increases. So you forget, when our heart rate increases, we're getting all this blood pumped around our body. So the blood gets pumped into our skin. And I always talk about this, because when I'm talking about sensuality and tactile sense, if we forget to just really spend the time touching each other, like if you just go, right, get your gear off, get back, I'll just jump on top and, wet the old wham bam, thank you, man.
Sounds if we don't, better when you say it in Australian.
So better with an accent. Right. It's so good.
Shagir.
Do you know that I did ask them when they told me at Northern Pictures that the show was going global? I asked them if they could have my voice dubbed. I asked them if they could dub it into a really husky Latino voice, or honestly, I'm even trying to make it husky. And but what they said to me was, Jodi, you don't understand. When people in the United States hear your voice, that's that is so Aussie. Well, I've got this image in my head of what's really, go, oh no, I want to sound like, I want French. Make me French. That would be gorgeous.
You're doing just fine.
Yeah.
I think we forget to touch. We forget how important taking time out just to touch one another, and outside of the act of sex, of just being able to walk past your partner. Interestingly, many people with autism, they have a real part of their life is to do things in routine and sameness. And so some couples that I work with, they have got the act of sex down to such a routine that there's one couple that I worked with that the libido issue was shocking, because and this is a heterosexual couple, she was running anytime he came to her, because his concept was of any type of affection. If he lay his hand on her, physically touched her, the routine was then to go all the way to coming, all the way to orgasming. So she used to be, in the kitchen preparing the Vegemite sandwiches for the kids, or peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and her partner would come towards her. And if he even got anywhere close to her, if she thought he was physically going to touch her, she knew that this was the routine, because he had no expression of affection and physical affection outside of this act of sex. And their lives had changed, and so that couldn't be done. So he was a great fella, a really wonderful man who just needed the support to understand that from her perspective and point of view, she needed sometimes for his hand to be laid on her, but it not have to end in this act.
Support, but not in the end in sex.
Yeah, and he was
I know you say like he's autistic, but that's the case for a lot of guys out there. Especially young, the expectation of wanting to, we've the myth of blue balls. We even like back in the day, we're literally taught that somehow women should feel guilty if a guy didn't, climax, and it was almost as if it's such a myth and such bullshit. And it's fascinating that somehow that was part of our curriculum. But you didn't.
And in the opposite way, I find that many women that I work with, and young women particularly, young women don't even understand their own sensual needs. They don't even understand their own sexual arousal. So I teach boys or even a girl who's lesbian or transgender or whatever, what a sexual arousal in a woman looks like. Because if you think about all that fumbly sex that happened, often girls weren't lubricated enough. So there was this perception that first-time sex was going to hurt. But often first-time sex for women hurts because they're not bloody aroused. And so if a woman's not aroused, then of course sex is going to be uncomfortable and hurt. But how many young men go through, sex education by the time they're 14 and 15 and 16 and getting taught, okay, if you're heterosexual, this is what a woman's body should feel like. And you should not be going anywhere with your fingers or inside or inserting anything until this is what nobody talks about pleasure. No. Nobody does. And so what, like young
pleasure's
people
a sin.
And what kids do then is they go to porn. Many people go to porn. And as we know, porn has a formula to it. And so we know that there's been an increase in different sort of, that the formula of, I teach young people and teach people about a money shot all the time. Like,
historically, I think what you're saying is porn is designed specifically for men, and that formula is all about like a man's interest. There's no focus on is the woman enjoying it. There's a terrible implication that she will enjoy
whatever he
offers her,
because good for her. She's so lucky that the man is doing it.
So
but it's also,
that's the formula.
And if you guys watch most of it, it'll be start with this, then it will be, we might see a bit of a hand job going on, somebody getting fingered, then the next step will be maybe him having, a blow job to him, maybe oral sex to her.
Like a blow job for like 20 minutes sex. Sometimes.
Then we will see anal sex, then we'll see the money shot. So it's like this, then this, then this, then this, then this. And that's the formula that happens. And so with a lot of young people I work with, particularly if that's where they're getting their sex education, we've got to help them critically analyse porn and help them. The analogy I always use is we don't watch Fast and the Furious to learn how to drive a car. So if you're watching porn to learn to do sex,
that's great.
Then you're not going to get it right, because there's no way in crap that when you can drop a car out of the back of a aeroplane with a parachute on it and think that that's driving a car. So they get that, but it's about, because we all still have great difficulty talking about sexuality and sensuality and our presentation of gender, and we're stifled in it. And that's why I think it becomes complex in relationships as well, just communication in relationships.
Yeah, that was my final question, is that let's say you have a couple struggling with it. They hear what you're saying in terms of reintroducing sensuality into the relationship to get that sexuality back. What's some tips in terms of communicating it? Because I'm assuming a lot of people listening, well, how do I have that conversation with my husband or wife, or how do I address it? Is it, I'm a direct person, so I'm just like, oh, just say it. But how is there tricks or tips that you can offer in terms of even something that you might suggest to your patients in terms of like, how do you go about resetting and having that conversation?
It depends on whether it's the individual is seeing me, Nick, and the individual saying, I am having trouble in my relationship, or whether the couple's there together. So if the couple's there together, you can help them navigate that.
What if it's the individual?
Yeah, so if it's the individual, then often what I will do to start with is try and talk to them about what their partner's like. And what you're saying, does your partner like direct communication? How could we do this from your partner's perspective and point of view? I use the analogy a lot, like sometimes it's when you've got, if you walk into your boss sometimes and you say, oh, this really good idea, let's do this. Your boss is like, nah. But if you dribble and feed little bits of information, then all of a sudden it's your boss's idea. So sometimes it's actually dribbling the information to your partner in a way that they get to see the benefit, and all of a sudden they do it. If they're like you, then maybe you can just go and say, right, let's try something different. Let's, do it in a different way. Other times it's, your partner, if you can find out that your partner, what I sometimes say, what is the best experience? Like, when were you guys having the best sex you've ever had? And people will be able to tell you what it's like. And then I say, well, why don't you just mix it up a little bit? So, and it's not mixing it up like we've all got that movie image of partner comes home and we're standing, in our lingerie. No, that's not it. It's what was the thing. So you go back to, if it was the best time of your life was when you watched the footy together and had a couple of beers, then set that up. Just with the two of you, set that up. And then while you're watching the footy and having a few beers, then you start dribbling the information. Then you start coming in to, there's a whole lot of different ways, but it really depends on what your partner's communication is. I do the one I do often is I say, sometimes you don't even have to say anything. And I know this is a long story. No, I'll keep it short. But sometimes you don't have to say anything. Do you know we send a message to another person with our bodies all the time? And Chrissy, you'll know this.
Okay.
Because women spend a lot more money on lingerie. But I teach a lot of women and fellas this trick. When we're feeling sensual, if you go and buy, what do you guys call them? We call them a thong, a G-string pair of undies.
Yeah, thong.
Okay, so when you're wearing a G-string, that's not for your sensuality. That's because you're giving the other person the visual image to get them going. Like, G-strings are not always comfortable. But I'll tell you what, if you go and buy a pair of really silky underwear that you're kind of moving against like this, like, get me if you're wearing fabric on your own skin. Sorry, I'm doing this. I'm just
I love it.
Leading and going. If you're wearing fabric on your skin or something really silky, even if it's under your pants, tell you what, if you're sitting next to your partner while you're watching the football, having a couple of beers, but you start kind of moving around in your own skin, just moving around, your partner will be onto it like a flash. You don't even have to say the words. No. You just have to be presenting yourself as sensual.
I have one more question before I let you go. Is it just because of how sex and society and gender roles have been kind of taught us over the years? But how come if a woman is aroused and she wants to have sex with her partner in a heterosexual relationship, her male partner, and a guy might not be into it, do they seem to be more offended or take it more personally than the other way around? Is that because men are just presumed to always want to be into it, and then they just is it just that, or are there other reasons behind it?
I think it's also because women put a lot more effort into it.
We're taught, aren't we? And you would say it too, the pressure on, I think it's pressure on men. I think that as a society, we've really created this narrative that men are always ready and willing. They will always have a big, strong, hard erection, which is bullshit. They always are going to come at the end of it. They always, if you just click your fingers, bam, man's going to be there. And I think that has been a story that we've created. And I feel really, really sad for men that they are expected to be.
Thank you. No, I mean, but seriously, like when you're in your 20s, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, you are generally like, so do you wanna? And it's like you're always ready. But like as you get older, right? Even in late 20s, early 30s, like it doesn't always happen. You don't always want to, and sometimes you have to explain it's not you. Or if you don't climax, like it's like this whole you have to like. It's just like this whole deal. It's like, what's wrong? Like, there's nothing wrong with me, or like I don't know, and it becomes a thing that couples often argue about, and men do get stressed about, or it's just like
and there's the narrative that's been created for us. The narrative has been created that is what men's sexuality is about, and the opposing, as we know, it's taking a long, long time to break down that if a woman is just wanting to explore that in a she's a nymphomaniac and he's impotent. How ridiculous is that? How ridiculous to think that our sexuality and our way that we express our sexuality is going to be the same across a lifespan or on any given day. And, I'm with you. I think that men need to be able to go, this is just as it is. I'm just a human. Some days it's going to be working. Some days it's not. Some days I'm going to be into it. Some days I'm not.
Jody, it's always working. It's just sometimes.
Just to be clear.
Sometimes it's tired.
But also boys have to remember, like she said earlier, girls sometimes are working at the sensuality part and they probably put in an extra effort to try and make that happen that night.
Yeah.
So that's why they get upset. We're emotional.
It's why some people say, I can't believe you went to university and studied sex for that many years. And I'm going, there is the wealth of so much interesting stuff when it comes to human sexuality. It is so brilliant. And, our sexuality is also about our relationships. And I just took it one step further and got a bit kooky because I just work with, people that on the show itself, they didn't actually put anywhere sexologist because they just thought that would be a bit too out there. And because they just want to, there's very, very few people that sort of specialise in working with autistic people and around sexuality and relationships. But yeah, look at us. See, you take me down a garden path in sex and I just walk down there with you.
I thank you for it. I mean, that's a lot of the people listening will appreciate, going down this path, just because it's something that we don't talk about enough. And when we do, not even talk about it, but get that kind of content, whether it's porn or a sex scene in a movie, we don't discuss it or talk about it. I mean, how many people listening to this, including myself, realize that a fetish isn't, just because you're into something, right? And how we're so quick to label things as weird or not, like just because it's not mainstream. And we have this ability to judge a little bit more when we talk about sex and sexuality. So, and then everyone, and as I'm sure we just don't talk about it. We all have these thoughts. We're all doing our own weird things. We're all like, we don't want people to know our truths. And the truth is, everyone has their truths. Everyone's doing their shit, and most of the time it's all just fine and not harming anyone else. It's just their unique perspective on what they find sensual and sexual.
Yep.
So I'm glad we went down that path, Jody.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that it's hard enough to talk about. It's hard to talk about with another person. If it's causing no harm, it's causing no harm.
Yeah. Well, Jody, I really appreciate you taking the time. We know you're busy, and it's been such a delight to talk to you. And best of luck on season 2. We cannot wait to catch up on Michael and the rest of the gang, and maybe we'll be introduced to some more people. And if you're listening, you haven't seen Love on the Spectrum yet, it is streaming on Netflix. It is a really great feel-good series. It's 5 episodes. It's an easy watch. You'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll feel good, and you might learn a little bit about communication and your own sexuality, and might learn from people who are different than you yourself.
You love it.
So, thanks again for listening, guys. We'll just send you off on your way. Don't forget you're sending your questions at nickcastme.com, cast with a K. If there's nothing else, subscribe, rate us 5 stars. Other than that, we will see you on Monday.